Hey guys, tonight we're diving into a life so brutal, so magnificently disgusting, you'll wonder how anyone survived it, let alone lived it. We're not talking about battlefield glory or Hollywood heroics. No. Tonight's story is about what it was really like to be a World War II soldier. And spoiler alert, it might not be what you think. If you're enjoying our sleepy history journeys, I'd really appreciate a quick like or a subscribe. It motivates me to make more content for your viewing pleasure. And hey, drop your city and the time you're watching in the comments. Now close your eyes, lay back, because tonight you're not just watching history, you're surviving it. You're now a soldier in World War II. Which army? It doesn't matter. The food still sucks. You're not in a movie. You're not storming the beaches with slow-motion music and dramatic zoom-ins. You're waking up face first in a frozen hole in the ground. Your mouth tastes like metal. Your boots are wet, your fingers are numb, and something just scurried across your chest that definitely wasn't a squirrel. You don't know what time it is. Your watch froze 3 days ago. Your breakfast? A crushed cigarette and a stick of chewing gum that expired sometime during the Great Depression. You're cold, tired, and your socks haven't been dry since your cousin got drafted. That was 11 months ago. Welcome to World War II. This isn't a story about generals and grand strategies. This is about you, the underfed, overworked, and perpetually damp cog in a global meat grinder. Your job isn't to win the war. Your job is to survive long enough to maybe be slightly less miserable by the end of the day, and that's if you're lucky. Let's talk about conditions. You might imagine World War II soldiers sleeping in bunks, reading letters by candlelight. More like a muddy foxhole, half collapsed, filled with stale water and something that used to be a sandwich. There's no such thing as a clean uniform. No matter how many layers you wear, you're either freezing or sweating, sometimes both, at once. Your feet? Permanently wet. Your skin? Chafed to oblivion. Your hair, a war crime unto itself, and you're never alone. You've got roommates, lice, fleas, and rats the size of regulation footballs. They eat your food, they eat your socks. One of them winked at you yesterday. Hygiene is a fantasy. You don't shower, you sponge yourself with a rag that's cleaner than nothing but still smells like regret. You might get deloused, but you'll be reinfested before dinner. Soap is a luxury. Toothpaste is a myth. Toilet paper? Ha! Your bathroom is a pit you dug with a rusty shovel. The smell could weaponize itself. And then there's the food. If you're lucky, you get a K ration box. It contains a can of meat, some kind of cracker that doubles as drywall, a brick of cheese the colour of betrayal, and coffee grounds you eat raw because there's no hot water. Spam is your protein. If it jiggles, you eat it. If it crunches, you pretend it was meant to. After a few weeks, your digestive system becomes a hostile entity. You don't trust it. It doesn't trust you. The days blur together. You're either marching, digging, waiting, or running. Or worse, getting yelled at while you're doing all four at once. The drills are relentless. Your pack weighs more than your will to live. You carry everything on your back. Ammo, a helmet, a gas mask, 2 canteens, and enough canned meat to sustain a bear through hibernation. Except you're not a bear. You're a chronically sleep-deprived meat sack with trench rot. Fear is a constant. Explosions, gunfire, planes overhead. You flinch every time a twig snaps. You've learned to tell the difference between friendly fire and enemy fire. Not that it matters. Both are equally likely to kill you. A nearby shell blast can leave you concussed, deaf, or worse, covered in someone else's lunch. And yet, through it all, you keep moving. Why? Because stopping means thinking, and thinking means remembering, and remembering, well, let's not do that. Let's not forget morale. Every now and then, someone drops off a crumpled pin-up photo or a tiny bottle of something vaguely alcoholic. There might be a dance, or a sing-along, or someone attempting comedy with a hand puppet made from a sock and a dead rat. These moments of joy are short-lived. The next day you'll be hauling crates through ankle-deep mud while someone screams about the Geneva Conventions like that actually helps. And don't even ask about medical care. You twist your ankle, wrap it in duct tape and walk it off. You get a fever. Must be nerves. You've lost too much blood. Here, chew on this stick and try not to scream. Combat medics were brave, no question, but their toolkits were a mix of morphine, gauze and desperate optimism. If you needed surgery, the odds of infection were higher than the odds of survival. So why do you keep going? Because everyone else does. Because there's no choice. Because survival becomes a habit. And because deep down you're holding out hope for a warm bed, a hot meal, and a day without the sound of gunfire. But those things don't come easy. Not in 1942, not in this mud-caked, lice-bitten, spam-fueled nightmare. And that's just the beginning. Tomorrow you'll dig latrines, dodge snipers, clean your rifle with spit, and try not to cry when your mystery meat stew makes a second appearance. But for now, for just this moment, your boots are off, your helmet's beside you, and the sky above is full of stars you can't name. Close your eyes, try to sleep. Because in the morning you'll wake up in the same uniform, in the same hole to the same misery, and call it another day in paradise. It begins, as most things do in war, with the cold. Not the kind that nips at your nose or tickles your fingers. No, this cold doesn't flirt. It conquers. It seeps through your blanket, through your coat, through your skin, and curls up like a house cat in your bone marrow. You're not waking up so much as thawing out. Your eyelids stick together. Your breath fogs the air so slowly it looks like you're exhaling ghosts. Your back aches from sleeping on frozen roots, and your socks, you think they're socks, are more ice than wool. You can't feel your toes, but you wiggle them anyway, partly out of hope, partly to check they haven't snapped off in the night. Welcome to the morning routine. Your bed is a hole in the ground. A foxhole, technically, although foxes probably had better insulation. Dug by hand, reinforced with scraps, and shared with exactly one too many boots. It's barely wide enough for your shoulders. Rain pooled in it sometime yesterday. Ice crystals formed overnight. You slept with your helmet on your chest and your rifle across your lap, because if the weather doesn't kill you, not having your gear close enough just might. And you always sleep in your boots, that's rule number 1. During the Battle of the Bulge in 1944, soldiers who took off their boots at night often found them frozen solid by morning, or worse, stolen by desperate comrades. Frostbite cases surged when boots couldn't be put back on fast enough, resulting in over 17,000 cold weather injuries among US troops alone. Getting up isn't a single action, it's a ceremony of creaks, curses, and careful leverage. The wrong movement might collapse part of the wall. The wrong sound might get you noticed. You listen first. No birds, no breeze. Just the distant pop of small arms fire and the heavy stillness of anticipation. Another day when nothing might happen, or everything. You sit up slowly, head peeking above the foxhole's rim like a prairie dog with anxiety. The sky is grey, always grey. You forgot what blue looks like. You forgot what warmth feels like. Your breath is white fog. Your fingers, clumsy icicles. There's dirt in your teeth, frost on your pack, and a rat half buried in your coat too cold to be startled by you. You admire its survival instincts. The first task of the day, checking your feet. Not for fun, not even for comfort, but because trenchfoot is the silent assassin of your lower limbs. You peel back your socks, stiff as parchment, and examine the pale, bloated skin beneath. Still attached, still yours, for now. Trenchfoot didn't disappear after World War I. In World War II, thousands of Allied soldiers suffered from it again, especially during wet winter campaigns in Italy and the Ardennes. Prevention included daily foot inspections, applying whale oil, and swapping out socks, assuming you had dry ones to begin with. You don't. You turn them inside out and pretend that counts as laundering. Above ground, someone yells, "Stand to!" The unofficial alarm clock of trench warfare. You haul yourself up, groaning through every joint, and assume the position. Crouched, helmet low, rifle ready. Why? Because dawn and dusk are prime attack hours. Visibility is low, nerves are high, and nobody's had breakfast yet. That's how wars start. So you scan the tree line, watch the mist, pretend you're fully awake, when in truth you're still dreaming of hot showers and actual mattresses. The foxhole's walls are reinforced with planks, sandbags, and one rusty bicycle frame someone found in a nearby village. You and the guy next to you spent hours hammering it together last week. Not because it would save your life, but because it gave your hands something to do that wasn't shooting or shaking. Everything here is improvised. Your stove is a dented coffee can filled with solidified bacon grease. Your spoon is a flattened shell casing. Your toothbrush? Well, let's just say your teeth have stopped expecting much. Many soldiers improvised daily tools in the field. It was common to turn shell casings into candle holders, helmets into wash basins, and empty ration tins into everything from shovels to frying pans. Supply lines were inconsistent, especially on the front lines, so adaptability became a form of survival. Now that you've survived the morning frost and the obligatory paranoid lookout, it's time for breakfast, or something that loosely resembles it. You reach into your pack and pull out what you hope is an edible ration. It's hard, it's beige, it has sharp corners. Congratulations, it's compressed cereal. Just add hope. You pour a few flakes into your mess tin, add water from your canteen, which might be 20% mud, and stir with a twig. The flavour is a cross between cardboard and disappointment. K-rations included compressed cereal bars, meat and cheese tins, and packets of dried fruit. Designed for portability over taste, they were universally loathed. Soldiers frequently traded their rations or doctored them with hot sauce or powdered coffee to make them tolerable. You once saw a guy use his cereal bar as a doorstop. As you eat, you try not to think about the date. Time is meaningless. Days bleed into each other. The only calendar you follow is the one in your bowels, and even that's irregular. You scratch at your sleeve. Flea bites again. You gave up trying to keep track of them. You're just happy they're not lice this time. Probably. A sergeant shouts something nearby. Orders, maybe. Or maybe he's just cold and angry. That's the default mood out here. You pour what's left of your cereal into the dirt for the rat. It earned it. Your rifle is already strapped to your chest. Cleaned last night. Kissed this morning. It's more reliable than your bowels, your boots, or your government. You adjust your helmet, tug at your scarf, and slap some feeling back into your face. Another day in paradise. From the foxhole you crawl out into a landscape of churned mud, scorched trees, and the distant scent of diesel. Your back aches, your fingers throb, and your toes feel like they belong to someone else. But you're vertical. You're alive. And in war, that's a pretty decent start. Up ahead, the chow line is forming, a grim procession of hollow-eyed ghosts in wool coats. You join them, dragging your boots through frozen mud, stomach grumbling. But before you can even reach the pot of lukewarm spam hash, someone calls your name. Or at least the noise that passes for your name here. You've been picked for the morning drill, or of course you have. Your reward for surviving the night in a frozen foxhole? A hot meal. Or at least something vaguely warm, allegedly edible, and legally classified as food. You shuffle toward the mess line like a half-frozen ghost, boots squelching through last night's sleet turned slush. The line itself is a study in broken morale. 30 shivering soldiers staring into the distance, fantasizing about coffee that doesn't come in powdered form and eggs that didn't arrive via cardboard crate. The air smells like wet wool, diesel fumes, and whatever's cooking in the dented pot over the fire. You think it might be ham. It might also be regret. They hand you a metal tray, dented and stained with the ghosts of breakfast past. The serving ladle slaps down a yellow, jiggling blob onto the centre. It shudders slightly. You stare at it. Powdered eggs. reconstituted with water, heated over a field stove and served in optimistic portions. They're somewhere between foam insulation and rubber cement, with a flavour profile best described as yes, technically. During the war, you learn not to question texture. These powdered eggs, believe it or not, are considered an upgrade. They replaced earlier, even worse options, like dried egg mix that turned to glue in humid conditions. America alone produced over 500 million pounds of the stuff during the war, and if you're lucky, there's a packet of salt nearby. If not, you'll be tasting this meal again in your dreams, and not in a good way. Next to the eggs, you get a small tin labelled meat product. That's not a nickname, that's its actual title. The contents are opaque. Could be pork, could be chicken, could be parts of animals no one's allowed to mention under the Geneva Conventions. You bite in, it squeaks. The bread, if you can call it that, is a dense, square biscuit, so dry it creates dust on impact. You snap it in half, dunk it in your coffee substitute, which tastes faintly of tree bark, and chew with caution. You miss actual bread. You dream about it. Sometimes when you close your eyes, you remember the soft give of a crust, the yeasty smell of something baked and warm. But that's civilian stuff. Here, bread is a weapon. It could chip teeth or deflect bullets. Maybe both. Your seat is a stump or a crate or just the ground. It doesn't matter. You won't be comfortable anyway. You balance your tray on your knees and eat with one gloved hand, the other wrapped around your canteen to stop it from freezing shut. It's always cold. Even your coffee, if you don't drink it fast, becomes a slushy mistake in under 10 minutes. Technically, it's not even coffee. It's instant granules mixed with powdered creamer and sugar, served lukewarm and tasting like compromise. But it's caffeinated, and that makes it sacred. To someone back home, this meal might look depressing, but in this trench-ridden winter wonderland, it's luxury. There are rumours that rear echelon troops get fresh eggs, maybe even toast. Some say they've seen jam. Jam. You try not to think about it. Comparison is the thief of morale. The soldier beside you tears open a ration pack and grins. He found a Hershey's chocolate bar. Technically, Hershey's D-ration, designed not to taste too good so soldiers wouldn't eat it all at once. That's not a joke. The US government literally asked Hershey to make a chocolate bar that was calorie-dense but intentionally bland. They succeeded. It has the texture of candle wax and melts only under direct artillery fire. Still, you envy him. Chocolate is chocolate. While you chew, you examine the rest of your ration pack. There's a box of chewing gum, a folded sheet of toilet paper, a cruelly small one, and a stick of something called vitamin candy. It tastes like sadness. The entire kit fits in a cardboard box sealed with wax stamped with patriotic slogans. Inside is everything you need to survive 24 hours on the battlefield. Assuming you don't need joy, flavour or digestive regularity, you reach the bottom of your tray and find a smear of yellow goo clinging to the corner. You hesitate. Then you scrape it up with the edge of your spoon and eat it anyway. Because calories are calories, and because in the back of your mind you remember that ration logistics are always one missed truck away from starvation. During the North African campaign, entire units went days with no fresh food, surviving on hard biscuits and dried beef. In the Pacific, canned meat sometimes arrived bloated from the heat, smelling like chemical warfare. And yet soldiers still ate it. Hunger doesn't ask questions. You fold up your trash because littering gets you yelled at. That, and rats have developed a taste for coffee grounds. You once saw one drag a cigarette butt into its nest. No one blamed it. Just as you finish packing up, a sharp whistle cuts through the morning haze. Drill time. Your stomach gurgles in protest. You're not sure if it's the eggs or the existential dread. Either way, you stand up, groan through every joint and fall in line. Ahead of you, 2 hours of forced marching, weapon inspection, and shouted instructions about things you already know. The sergeant will be in a bad mood. He always is. Maybe he had the eggs too. You swing your pack onto your shoulders and feel the familiar weight settle into your spine. Rifle slung, boots laced, helmet on tight. The sun is rising, a dull grey smear behind the clouds, and you're ready to move. You don't know where you're going. You never really do. Orders change, objectives shift. One day you're holding a hill, the next you're guarding a supply line, the next you're digging another foxhole in another miserable patch of nowhere. But no matter what the mission is, one thing is always true. Breakfast never gets better. Your boots crunch through crusted snow as the line moves forward. The powdered eggs slosh in your belly like wet cement. You swallow hard, grip your rifle, and march into the mist. The drill sergeant's voice cuts through the cold. Let's go. Move like you mean it. You don't, but you do. Because in this war, surviving breakfast is only the beginning. Morning drills begin the way most things do in the army, with yelling. The voice comes before the sunrise, shrill, cold, and carried by the kind of lungs that only exist in chain-smoking sergeants and large geese. It cuts through the fog and into your skull, bouncing off the inside of your helmet like a war crime. You jolt awake, standing before your brain fully joins you. Your spine crackles like a dying fire, and your joints argue with each other over whether they should bend or snap. You're not sure you slept. More likely you paused consciousness. There is no snooze button in a foxhole. The closest thing is pretending not to hear your name, which is pointless because nobody remembers your name anyway. You're you. And you are late. You scramble into formation, boots half-laced, fingers frozen, breath puffing like an old steam engine. The powdered eggs from breakfast are staging a quiet rebellion in your lower intestine, but there's no time to negotiate. Today's drill, marching, again. Because nothing says war effort like synchronized misery. The line forms, a ragtag battalion of wool-clad scarecrows held together by boot polish, bandages and blind obedience. Helmets slightly askew, straps dangling. One guy still has breakfast smeared on his cheek. Another is holding a rifle upside down like he's trying to tune a violin. You all look like you lost the war already. The sergeant, a gravel-voiced tyrant with a jaw like granite and emotions like a wet sandbag, starts barking orders. Forward march, left face, about face, forward again. Why? Because repetition builds discipline. Or maybe it just keeps you too tired to revolt. The mud grabs at your boots like it's trying to pull you under. Your pack digs into your spine like it's holding a personal grudge. Every step squishes, sucks, or slips. This is not a battlefield. This is a boot camp hosted by nature herself, and she's in a very bad mood. After 20 minutes of high-stepping through slush, your calves burn like they've been lit with a flamethrower. You start to envy trees. They get to stand still. Then come the jumping jacks, then push-ups, then a series of commands so rapid and contradictory that your body begins to question if you're the enemy. And through it all there's sweat. In the cold it clings to you like guilt. In the heat, especially in the tropics, it becomes a second skin. Sticky, salty, stewing with bacteria. You smell like fear and foot fungus. Speaking of tropics, drills are worse when the air feels like soup. If you were stationed somewhere like the Pacific, humidity adds an entirely new layer of torment. Everything rots faster. Boots, food, morale. You become an ecosystem for mold. And then there are the mosquitoes. Out here they don't just bite, they interrogate, and they carry souvenirs. Malaria is the worst one. The fever comes on fast. A violent shivering that feels like your bones are auditioning for a jazz band. Then comes the sweating, then the chills, then the vomiting, then the fun part, watching everyone pretend you're just fine. You once saw a guy throw up mid-jumping jack and finish the set. That's discipline, or brain damage. During World War II, over 500,000 US troops were infected with malaria. Not in combat, but just trying to live long enough to get there. In places like New Guinea, The disease rate among Allied forces sometimes exceeded 85%. Entire units were taken out without a single bullet fired. To fight back, the army handed out atabrine, a bitter little yellow pill with a side effect list longer than your rifle. Soldiers hated it. Not because it didn't work, it did somewhat, but because it stained your skin a sickly yellow and had the subtle flavour of sulfuric battery acid. Some refused to take it, claiming it made them sterile. Others flushed it, traded it, or stuffed it in their socks. Malaria, meanwhile, didn't care what you believed. It just waited. But back to the drill, you're running laps now, not jogging, running. Your rifle flops against your chest with every step. Your belt loosens. Your trousers threaten to betray you at full sprint. The mud is deeper now, thicker. You lose a boot halfway through a lap and have to dig it out with one hand while the sergeant shouts about grit and guts. You briefly consider dying just to get out of push-ups. After the run, it's rifle drills. Raise, lower, shoulder, present arms, clean, disassemble, reassemble, repeat. Your fingers are numb and your knuckles cracked, but your rifle is spotless. Cleaner than your fingernails. Cleaner than your conscience. That's because in war, your rifle is everything. In World War II, basic training drilled weapon care into soldiers like gospel. Malfunctions weren't just embarrassing, they were fatal. Manuals stressed daily cleaning, even during combat. Some troops slept with their rifles cradled against their chest like sacred relics. You do too. You've named it. Not out loud. That'd be weird. You stop for a water break. 5 seconds, maybe 10. The canteen water is lukewarm and metallic, but it's wet, and that's enough. Hydration matters, especially in the heat. Soldiers in North Africa often carried 2 or more canteens, each wrapped in wet canvas to keep the water cool through evaporation. It sort of worked. Mostly it made your pack smell like a mildew sandwich. Just as you start to feel your heartbeat return to normal, the whistle blows again. Bayonet training. You groan. Bayonets. 6-inch blades you strap to the end of your rifle for stabbing straw dummies and, if things get really bad, actual people. In theory, it's a backup weapon. In practice, it's a psychological tool, both for you and for them. You line up. The straw dummy stares at you, smug and unfeeling. You charge. Thrust, the instructor yells. Withdraw. Again. You obey. Thrust. Withdraw. Step back. Reset. Over and over. You're stabbing the embodiment of your choices in life. Your arms shake. Your legs burn. Your mind is somewhere else entirely. Maybe a diner. Maybe a beach. Maybe anywhere but here, on this muddy field, screaming at a sack of straw like it insulted your mother. You finish the drill. You're sweating through your jacket. Your socks are soaked. Your hands are raw. And the sergeant is smiling. You fear him more than malaria. Finally, mercifully, you're dismissed. You collapse onto an overturned crate, breathing like you just outran a tank. Your breakfast has officially turned on you, gurgling and shifting like a live grenade in your stomach. You ignore it. You sip from your canteen, wipe your face with your sleeve, and try to remember what dry feels like. And that's when someone taps you on the shoulder. Supply duty. You've been picked. Again. Because nothing says recovery like hauling crates of canned meat through mosquito-infested mud with the knees of a 90-year-old and the digestive system of a cursed raccoon. You stand up, groan, stretch, crack your neck. Time to go earn your lunch. The trick with supply runs is to pretend they're not dangerous. You tell yourself it's just a routine errand, like fetching groceries if the grocery store was 30 miles away, surrounded by landmines and occasionally shelled for sport. Technically, you're not in combat. You're delivering supplies. Food, ammo, mail sacks, spare boots. Nothing glamorous, nothing worth dying over, and yet statistically, supply routes are some of the most lethal strips of real estate in the war. The front lines are where the shooting happens. The supply roads are where the dying happens quietly. You're handed a manifest, a smudged sheet with numbers, crates, and vague instructions scribbled by someone who hasn't seen mud in weeks. You tuck it into your jacket and haul yourself into the back of a truck that smells like rust, gun oil, and feet. It lurches forward like a wounded elephant. The ride begins. You bounce along a rutted dirt road barely wide enough for 2 mules. Trees press in from both sides. The canopy is thick, and so is the tension. You sit on top of a crate labelled Biscuits Type C, which is funny, because you once bit into one and lost a filling. Type C might stand for concrete. Next to you there's a stack of helmets. The one on top still has a bullet hole in it. You try not to think about that. The road snakes through forest and field, village and valley. Bomb craters line the path like pockmarks. Somewhere out there, maybe 10 feet, maybe 10 miles, is someone with a scope and a grudge, waiting for a silhouette to twitch. You keep your head low. In theory, supply trucks are non-combatants. In practice, they're giant rolling targets. The enemy knows, no bullets, no food, no fight. In Italy, drivers used to hang laundry over the sides of their trucks to make them look like civilian vehicles. In France, convoys often moved at night, without headlights, navigating by moonlight and prayer. Even then, the casualty rate for supply units was staggering. In some theatres, non-combat troops were dying at the same rate as frontline soldiers, mostly due to ambushes, mines and accidents involving poorly maintained vehicles and roads that hated wheels. And oh, the roads. Calling them roads is generous. They're suggestion paths. Dirt, gravel, occasional planks, puddles that hide potholes, potholes that hide artillery shells, mud thick enough to drown a small horse. In North Africa, sandstorms buried convoys whole. In Burma, monsoons washed out bridges overnight. In Russia, the roads just ceased to exist every spring. The mud season, Rasputitsa, turned everything into soup. Tanks, trucks, morale. Your truck hits a rut the size of a coffin and bounces like a kicked canteen. You feel your spine realign. A helmet falls off the stack and rolls to your feet. You put it on. Better safe than perforated. The driver mutters something, slaps the dashboard and keeps going. You admire his optimism. Then there's the noise. The engine whines like it's being strangled. The wheels rattle. The crates shift with every bump. You can't hear your thoughts over the metallic chorus of doom, which is probably for the best. Your thoughts aren't very helpful. You pass a burned-out vehicle on the side of the road. Smoke still rises from it. No one stops. No one mentions it. You all just stare for a second, then look away like it's bad luck to acknowledge it. Because maybe it is. The halfway point is a checkpoint. 2 guards with rifles, a flag on a stick, and eyes so bloodshot they could qualify as air raid sirens. They wave you through with minimal ceremony. You hand them a crumpled piece of paper that might be an ID or a candy wrapper. They don't care. The enemy probably knows where this checkpoint is anyway. The hope is they're more bored than angry today. You continue. The forest gets thicker. The road narrows. Your knuckles whiten on the edge of the crate as the truck slaloms around debris, broken wheels, and the occasional very suspicious pile of dirt. And then it happens. A pop. Not a loud one. More like a thunk. The truck skids slightly. The driver swears. You jolt sideways and grab the side rail. Flat tire, not great, but it could have been worse. Until you realise you're now stopped, on a known supply route, in a kill zone. Everyone knows the rule. If something breaks, fix it fast or abandon it. Staying still is an invitation. You jump out. The mud sucks at your boots. You dig through the toolbox, find a jack, a spare, a wrench that probably predates the war. The driver mutters something about his mother and lies down in the sludge to loosen the bolts. You scan the tree line. Still quiet. Too quiet. You work faster. Every second feels longer. Your breath fogs the air. Your ears strain for anything. A branch snap, a whisper, the click of a trigger. You hear a bird. You don't trust it. Then, miracle. The tyres replaced. You all leap back into the truck, slam the doors, and barrel forward without a word. No shots fired, no ambush, just silence. Sometimes the worst doesn't happen. And that's the most unsettling part of all, the not knowing. The endless gamble. Every curve could be a trap. Every delay could be your last. The rest of the ride is quiet in that twitchy, post-panic sort of way. No one speaks. The crates creak, the biscuits rattle. Eventually the trees thin. You spot a cluster of tents, a few sandbags, and someone waving you in with a lazy hand. You made it. Unloading is its own punishment. Each crate weighs roughly 1 soul. You heave them onto pallets, your fingers numb and your back howling in protest. You're sweating, but the sweat goes cold instantly. Your shirt clings like a second skin made of wet rags. You deliver everything, the mail sacks, the boots, the ammunition, the food, including several dozen cans of creamed spinach, which nobody asked for and everyone resents. One soldier thanks you, another asks if you brought cigarettes, a third digs through the biscuit crate like a raccoon in a trash can. War does things to people. You sign a sheet confirming the drop-off. Your signature looks like it was done during an earthquake. No one checks. Then it's back in the truck. The same road, same bumps, same tension. Only this time, it's getting dark. You think you see movement once, a figure or a shadow, or just your imagination trying to kill you. Either way, your finger twitches near the trigger of your rifle. You don't fire, you just breathe. The base appears over the next ridge like a greasy mirage. Mud, tents, smoke. You could cry. You won't. But you could. You hop off the truck with the legs like soggy spaghetti. Your socks are soaked. Your pants are muddy. Your arms feel longer than they were this morning. But you're alive. Someone hands you a tin of stew. You sit on a crate. You eat. You don't taste it. The sergeant walks by, nods once and says, "You're on latrine duty tomorrow." Of course you are. There are a few jobs in the army that elicit universal dread. Latrine duty is all of them. It's the assignment that no one wants, everyone gets, and nobody forgets. No matter how many brain cells you lose to diesel fumes or powdered egg trauma, you're assigned to it not because you're bad at your job, but because everyone must eventually suffer. This is democracy in action. The great equalizer. The only certainty in war, besides death, mud, and never having enough socks. It begins before sunrise, as most punishments do. You're handed a shovel, a bucket, and a length of rope. There are no instructions. There is only nodding. Silent, knowing nods from men who have been broken. You make your way behind the tents to the edge of the camp, to a place affectionately referred to as the stink line. You know you've crossed it when your eyes begin to water and your mouth instinctively stops breathing. This is where the latrines are. Technically, they're just pits in the ground, 6 feet deep, narrow, reinforced with planks and a sense of denial. Some have makeshift seats, most don't. Some are covered. Others have become public art installations for flies. The one assigned to you looks like it's seen things, and now you will too. Latrines in World War II weren't standardised. They varied wildly by location, terrain, and whether anyone cared that week. In the European theatre, they might be lined trenches with sandbags for privacy. In the Pacific, they were often built over water, like rickety docks leading out over swamps. In extreme cold, some soldiers used thunder boxes, literal wooden crates with holes on top. All of them shared one defining feature: regret. Your job today is multi-pronged. Step 1. Dig a new pit. This involves selecting a site at least 100 feet from any water source, preferably downhill from the mess tent, and not currently occupied by enemy snipers, feral pigs, or unexploded ordnance. You fail 2 of these immediately. The ground is clay, your shovel is dull, your motivation is non-existent. It takes an hour to make progress, mostly because you're also swatting flies, dry heaving, and dodging the curious rat population that's begun to see you as a regular. You eventually dig something that qualifies as deep-ish. That's good enough. Step 2. Burn the waste. Yes, burn. In remote or mobile camps, standard procedure often included the use of burnout latrines, where waste was collected in 55-gallon drums cut in half, filled partially with diesel fuel and set on fire, supervised by the poor soul assigned to latrine duty. You are now that soul. The smell is apocalyptic. The smoke clings to your skin like betrayal. Your eyebrows singe within minutes. You gag so hard you see spots. One soldier described the experience as hell's barbecue. Another simply stopped speaking for 3 days. You stir the contents with a metal rod while standing as far back as physics will allow. The fire hisses like it's judging you. A plume of black smoke billows up and over the camp, causing a minor panic among new recruits who assume you've been hit by artillery. No one corrects them. As the flames die down, you're given a new assignment: latrine inspection. Because apparently someone in headquarters decided latrine hygiene impacts combat readiness. They weren't wrong. During the North African campaign, poor sanitation led to a dramatic spike in dysentery. In fact, across all theatres, diseases related to contaminated water and unsanitary conditions caused more troop evacuations than enemy fire. The US Army responded by creating entire field sanitation manuals, complete with diagrams, poop-related charts, and enthusiastic exclamation points about the importance of proper pit depth. You read one once, it haunts you. Inspection means checking existing latrines for signs of structural collapse, overflow, or, and this happens more than it should, animal occupation. You find one pit that appears to have been colonized by a snake. Another is filled to the brim and covered with what appears to be a thin plywood sheet labelled "Do Not Open." You don't. You mark it with a red flag and pretend you saw nothing. The afternoon sun turns the latrine zone into a baking oven of fermentation. Your clothes are soaked through. The diesel smoke clings to your nostrils. You take a swig from your canteen and wonder if you'll ever taste anything again. The irony is that you're the cleanest person in camp. Your hands have been scrubbed raw, your uniform bleached with fumes, your boots hosed down after stepping in. Things. But no one will sit near you at dinner. The scent follows like a curse. At one point, a group of officers passes by and comments on the sanitary improvements. One claps you on the back. You consider faking malaria just to escape this moment. By evening, the fire is out, the pits are dug, and the inspection is complete. You sit on a crate outside the sanitation tent, exhausted, dehydrated, and smelling like a war crime. A fellow soldier offers you a tin of beans. You decline, not because you're full, but because you now associate food with digestion, and digestion with fire. You stare into the distance. Somewhere someone is being shot at, someone else is marching, another is cleaning their rifle, and you're the reason none of them are ankle-deep in filth. You're the unsung hero of hygiene, and tomorrow it might be your turn again. Because the thing no one tells you about latrine duty is this: once you do it well, you become the latrine guy. And nobody forgets the latrine guy. Mail call. 2 words that have the power to silence a crowd of sleep-deprived soldiers, stop arguments mid-curse, and make even the guy with trench foot smile like he just heard the war was cancelled. You're standing near the logistics tent, half covered in latrine ash and still nursing a bruise from yesterday's supply run. But now there's a man holding a sack of letters and calling out names, or more accurately growling distorted syllables that vaguely resemble them. This is the closest you've come to hope since you found an uncracked biscuit in your ration pack last Tuesday. Mail is sacred. In a war where bullets are random and meals are questionable, the arrival of a letter from home is a tether to reality. A reminder that somewhere, beyond the endless mud and noise, people still exist. People who aren't covered in lice. People who use toilets that flush. Even if it's just a postcard, it's proof that you're more than a serial number in a soggy uniform. You're someone's son, someone's brother, Someone's reason to write dear and sign love. You shift anxiously in the slush, your breath fogging the cold air. The mail clerk reads off names with all the enthusiasm of a sleepwalker. Most of the mail is bent, damp, or half charred, but no one cares. A guy next to you clutches a pink envelope to his chest like it's newborn. Another one rips open a package, revealing a handful of stale cookies and a bar of soap shaped like a lamb. He weeps, quietly. No one mocks him. Then your name gets called, or something that rhymes with it. Close enough. You step forward, heart pounding with anticipation. Maybe it's a letter from your mother. Maybe it's a girl you haven't thought about since high school. Maybe it's a handwritten recipe for something that isn't powdered eggs. You accept the envelope like it's made of glass. The ink is smeared. There's a lipstick mark on the back. Or maybe that's jelly. You don't care. You don't even read it right away. You just hold it. Because for now, this is better than reading it. This is the moment before reality has a chance to ruin it. Mail delivery in World War II was a logistical nightmare wrapped in bureaucracy and tied with red tape. The US Army's V-mail system, short for Victory Mail, was designed to streamline overseas correspondence. Letters were photographed onto microfilm, flown across oceans, and then printed out and delivered to soldiers, like a primitive snail-paced email. It saved weight and space but turned emotional letters into sterile printouts. Many soldiers still preferred the real thing. Mail often arrived weeks or months late. Some letters were censored, black lines scribbled over anything too honest or critical. Others never made it at all, lost to water, fire, or clerical error, and still every soldier waited. Because even a heavily redacted letter from 6 weeks ago was better than none. You finally sit down on a dryish crate and tear it open. The handwriting is familiar. The opening line is simple. Something about the dog, or the garden, or how the neighbour's kid broke his arm again trying to jump off the roof with a bedsheet. It's not poetry, it's not dramatic, but it's human, and that makes it rare. Halfway through the letter, the tone shifts. They ask how you're doing, if you're okay, if you've had a decent meal lately, if it's cold. You can't answer. Not really. How do you explain that breakfast was reconstituted powder, your feet haven't been dry in a week, and you spent the morning incinerating human waste while a guy 2 tents over developed trench mouth from drinking rainwater out of his helmet? So instead, you just nod. Because somehow that helps. Then comes the part that really gets you. A sentence that reminds you who you were. A name, a nickname, a reference to something innocent. A baseball game, a joke, a holiday. Something small that hits harder than any explosion. And now you miss home. You miss it in a way that aches in your teeth. Mail wasn't just personal, it was strategic. High command knew morale was fragile. Troops who received letters were less likely to desert, more likely to follow orders, and slightly more willing to dig another foxhole at 3 a.m. Soldiers were encouraged to write back, even if it was just a few lines. Keep them engaged, the pamphlet said. Keep them writing, even if you had nothing to say. So you reach for your last scrap of paper, the one you keep folded in your breast pocket, and your borrowed pencil nub. You find a spot out of the wind. You balance the paper on your knee and start writing. Hi, I'm alive. It's a start. You pause, staring at the page. What do you say? That it snowed again last night and someone froze to the latrine seat? That the food is worse than you imagined and you once watched a man eat a candle stub out of boredom? That the world smells like diesel, mildew and wet wool, and you'd sell your soul for a real cup of coffee? Number. You write something normal. You mention the weather. You say you're eating well. You pretend you're sleeping through the night. You lie. Because war doesn't just take people, it takes language. It makes truth too heavy to mail. You sign it simply. Love me. You don't seal it. You fold it once, tuck it into your coat and wonder if it will ever reach them. Later that evening someone reads their letter aloud. Something romantic, probably made up. full of sugar and perfume and promises. People listen in silence, some laughing, some sighing. No one mocks it. Not even the grizzled guys, because for a few minutes you're all somewhere else, somewhere better. Then the distant boom of artillery brings you back. Mail call is over. The tent flaps close, the candle gets snuffed out, and the letter in your pocket, warm from your body heat, is the only thing still glowing in the dark. They don't tell you that shelling is loud, you already knew that. What they don't tell you is that it feels loud, like sound has grown hands and is now grabbing your organs. Each blast isn't just noise, it's pressure. It punches your ribs, rattles your molars and makes your eardrums ring like a fire alarm inside a tin can. But you're getting ahead of yourself. Let's start with the part where you're squatting over a trench latrine with your pants around your ankles, contemplating the philosophical concept of bowel evacuation when someone shouts the two words that kill digestion instantly. Incoming fire! There's no graceful way to respond. You fall sideways, mid-process, trousers halfway up, heart launching into your throat like it's trying to evacuate ahead of you. The whine of a shell grows louder, impossibly fast. And then boom! The ground trembles, dust falls from the sky, someone screams, someone else finishes their business and bolts with efficiency honed by trauma. And you're rolling through the dirt covered in everything you wish you weren't, trying to remember how to pray in 3 languages at once. Artillery was the #1 killer in World War II. Not bullets, not snipers, not even bombs from the sky. Just cold, impersonal, indiscriminate shell fire. German 88mm guns could obliterate tanks. Soviet Katyusha rockets could launch dozens of high-explosive payloads in seconds, earning the nickname Stalin's organ because of their howling sound and spine-chilling regularity. American field artillery units operated with ruthless precision, sometimes coordinating barrages that lasted hours. And for the guy on the receiving end, there was nothing to do but dig, duck, and hope. You crawl into a nearby foxhole, one you didn't dig, and definitely not recently inspected, and throw your arms over your head as another shell hits somewhere nearby. Hump. Your lungs feel like they deflated. Dirt peppers your back like hail. Someone stumbles in next to you, cursing in a language you barely recognize. Maybe it's a fellow soldier. Maybe it's just the fear speaking. Everything shakes. The air tastes metallic, your ears pop. You blink dust out of your eyes, spit mud, and clutch your rifle like it's going to help you survive physics. Shell shock, now more accurately referred to as combat stress reaction, was common and often misunderstood. In World War I, it was treated like cowardice. By World War II, the military had begrudgingly accepted that relentless explosions might, in fact, do things to the human brain. Soldiers would sometimes go blind, mute, or physically paralysed with no visible injuries. Others just stared, rocking, mumbling, waiting for the next blast. Treatment usually involved a short break behind the lines, maybe some cigarettes, and encouragement to get back in the fight. You don't feel like you're having a breakdown, but you also can't remember your own name right now, so maybe a little. The foxhole is damp. Everything smells like wet fabric, diesel, and someone's lunch from 3 days ago. You're pretty sure you landed in someone's biscuit tin. It's still warm. You peek over the edge. Smoke curls upward in lazy spirals. One of the tents is on fire. Another shell whistles overhead, but it doesn't hit you. Yet. You brace anyway. People often imagine war as a constant barrage of action. But shelling isn't cinematic. It's waiting. Waiting for the sound, waiting for the silence, because silence doesn't mean safety. It means the next one is loading. You try to count seconds between blasts. Someone told you that once. If you can hear the whine, it didn't hit you. Which is comforting until you remember that some shells are designed not to whine, just pop. Like a magician's trick, but with shrapnel. Shrapnel is the real star of the show. Shells aren't designed to explode neatly. They're designed to explode horizontally, ripping chunks of steel into thousands of high-velocity fragments that tear through flesh, fabric, and even reinforced bunkers. It's not the big boom that kills, it's the tiny razor flying at Mach 2 that finds your kneecap and keeps going. Hospitals during World War II were often overwhelmed not by gunshot wounds, but by blast trauma, concussions, internal bleeding, and fragments embedded in every imaginable body part. Some field medics learn to detect metal shards just by running a magnet over the skin. A soldier next to you starts laughing, not because anything is funny, but because the only other option is crying. You hand him a piece of gum from your pocket. It's stale, slightly crushed, and possibly older than you are. He chews anyway. You both duck as another shell lands somewhere behind the mess tent. That's where the canned meat was. May it rest in peace. After what feels like an hour, probably 15 minutes, the shelling stops. Not gradually. Not with a sense of closure. It just ends. Like someone flipped a switch. The quiet rushes in all at once, heavy and disorienting. You sit there, blinking, covered in dirt and probably things you shouldn't think about, wondering if this means it's over or if it's just a cruel intermission. You don't trust silence anymore. Someone calls out, hoarse and uncertain, "All clear?" No one moves. Then one brave idiot, probably you, peeks over the edge of the foxhole and sees that, yes, the tents are still standing. Mostly. Smoke is rising from the latrine zone. Of course. You climb out slowly, knees cracking, ribs aching. You're alive. Your pants are filthy. Your business remains unfinished, but you're alive. Around camp, people emerge from trenches like moles after a storm. They blink in the daylight. Some shake hands. Some light cigarettes. Some just collapse back into whatever counts as rest. Someone hands you a tin of peaches, probably out of sympathy. You eat them in silence, syrup dripping down your chin, dirt caked into every crevice of your fingers. It tastes like sugar and survival. Later the medics do their rounds, no fatalities, a few minor injuries. One guy went temporarily deaf and just keeps yelling, "What?" at everyone. Another insists he saw a raccoon throw a grenade. Probably the adrenaline. You hear someone say it was just a light barrage. That's the part that sticks with you. Light. You lie down that night in your damp sleeping roll and stare at the canvas overhead. Every muscle in your body is sore, your ears still ring, and your intestines are still holding a grudge. You close your eyes and try to drift off, but each creak, each pop, each gust of wind outside the tent sounds like the start of something bigger. And when you finally fall asleep, it's not rest, it's surrender. Because tomorrow the shells might come again, and this time you might not hear the whine. You've been itching for days, not metaphorically, literally. There's something alive in your collar, and your socks, and possibly your hair. It moves when you move, it bites when you sleep, and you've named one of them out of spite. Congratulations, you've met your wartime roommate, the louse, and it's not going anywhere. Because you, my dirt-caked, crust-smeared companion, haven't had a proper bath in 3 weeks. Let's rewind. In theory, soldiers are supposed to bathe regularly. In practice, bathing is what you do when the enemy's out of artillery shells, your sergeant has temporary amnesia, and a nearby stream isn't full of dead fish or floating boots. Which is to say, it doesn't happen often. Today, however, is different. Today you've been selected, no, blessed, to participate in what the quartermaster refers to as a delousing and hygiene cycle. It sounds official. It sounds promising. It sounds like they finally noticed the living terrarium growing under your uniform. You follow the others to a large tent pitched at the edge of camp. It smells like soap and mildew and faintly of something you can only describe as burnt wool. You pray it's not a trap. Inside, a man wearing gloves, actual gloves, points to a bench and says the words you've been waiting to hear since the Battle of your Armpits. Strip. And just like that, you're standing in a line of naked strangers, holding your clothes like a child waiting for laundry day. Modesty dissolves instantly. You've shared foxholes. This is nothing. A barrel sits in the centre of the tent, belching steam. This is the delousing unit, a converted oil drum filled with scalding vapour and enough chemicals to make your eyebrows surrender. You toss your uniform in and hope it returns with fewer occupants. Delousing wasn't a luxury, it was a military priority. Lice weren't just unpleasant, they were deadly. They spread trench fever, a bacterial infection that caused high fever, severe leg pain, and fatigue lasting for weeks. During World War I, over 1 million soldiers were affected. World War II commanders took this seriously, or tried to. Field units often used DDT, a powerful insecticide sprayed directly onto skin and clothing, usually by hand-pump canisters or, if morale was especially low, fire extinguishers filled with powder. Soldiers called it the bug bomb. Today you get both, a steam treatment and a generous coating of DDT to the scalp. It stings like betrayal. While your clothes boil in chemical purgatory, you're led to the bathing area, which is less a bath and more a shallow tub filled with lukewarm water that's seen at least 6 previous owners today. You step in, wincing. The water is brown. Your skin somehow is browner. You scrub with a bar of government-issued soap that smells like chalk and despair. It doesn't lather. It just sort of dissolves into a gritty paste that sticks to everything except the places you want clean. You splash, scrub, and try to avoid eye contact with the man washing his socks beside you. You haven't seen your own skin in weeks. It's patchy, red, speckled with bug bites, scratches, and something that might be mould. Your feet are worse, trench foot in progress, with peeling skin and that telltale smell of soon-to-be medical leave. You scrape a layer of grime from your neck and wonder how much of it is actually yours. In some regions, especially the Pacific, bathing meant using jungle streams or makeshift showers made from fuel cans and rainwater. Soldiers would strip down in the open, lather up, and rinse under a punctured metal drum. Privacy wasn't an option. Safety wasn't guaranteed. Snipers, leeches, and parasites were frequent guests. Some troops resorted to dry bathing, rubbing themselves with sand, snow, or even spare socks to exfoliate and stay marginally less revolting. None of it really worked. After your bath, you're handed a towel that feels like sandpaper soaked in vinegar. You pat yourself down, shivering, and return to the barrel where your clothes await, damp, stiff, and faintly radioactive. They're hot to the touch, but you put them on anyway, because they're your stiff, irradiated clothes. Then comes the powder. A man with a gas mask, always comforting, puffs DDT dust into your collar, armpits, waistband, and socks. You cough. He nods. You move on. You smell like a fumigated attic, but you're clean. Or at least cleaner than you were an hour ago. You step outside the hygiene tent into the late afternoon sun, blinking like a mole. The air feels crisper, lighter. You scratch your arm out of habit and smile when nothing bites back. It's short-lived. Within hours, the sweat returns, the dirt returns. You trip in a puddle, someone dumps stew on your boot. The soap smell fades, replaced with wet canvas, body odour, and whatever's inside that mystery meat tin from last week. And of course, the lice return, because you only killed most of them. Not all. They're tenacious, like you. Bathing in wartime isn't about luxury. It's about maintenance, keeping the rot at bay, delaying the inevitable descent into microbial anarchy. It won't last. You'll be filthy again by tomorrow. You'll smell like diesel and decay and hot socks. But for now, you're marginally less disgusting. And that in this war is as close to victory as you're going to get. You haven't slept in 3 days. Not really. You've closed your eyes. You've lost time. You've nodded off mid-march and woken up standing. But actual sleep, deep, dreamless, drool on your pillow sleep, that's extinct now. Like honour, fresh vegetables, and socks that fit. Tonight, though, Tonight might be different. Your section isn't under fire. The latrine pit is far enough away that the smell doesn't curl into your tent like a vengeful spirit. And, miracle of miracles, you've been issued a new wool blanket, still stiff from factory starch, but warm and relatively louse-free. This might be your moment. Your sleeping space is a marvel of minimalism. It's a torn canvas laid over churned mud. The tent's sides flap in the breeze like someone trying not to mention they've seen rats the size of teacup poodles scurry under the pallets. The roof leaks. The floor leaks. Reality leaks. You remove your boots, a risky move, and stuff them inside your sleeping roll to stop someone else from borrowing them. You wedge your rifle beside you like a security blanket. Then you lie down. Or rather, you arrange your body around the sharpest rocks and hope your spine forgives you in the afterlife. Sleep was a scarce commodity in World War II. The military scheduled rest periods, but war didn't always cooperate. Troops went days without uninterrupted sleep, especially during major campaigns. In Normandy, infantrymen often averaged just 3 hours per 24-hour cycle. In the Pacific, monsoons, mosquitoes, and surprise attacks made restful nights nearly impossible. Command tried rotating sleep shifts, 2 on, 4 off, but fatigue built up fast. So did mistakes. One study found that after 48 hours without sleep, reaction time and cognitive function dropped so drastically that soldiers began hallucinating or forgetting what side they were on. You feel that in your soul. The first obstacle to sleep is noise. Even when there's no active fighting, the world hums like a broken engine. The tents creak, boots squish through muck. Men cough, mutter, shift, snore. Someone outside is pacing. Someone else is choking on their own dreams. And then there are the rats. Always the rats. They skitter across beams, they gnaw on canteens. You once saw one drag an entire spoon into a supply crate. You try to ignore it, but you can't. Because right now, one is sitting on your chest, staring at you. You swat. It flees. You lie very still and try to pretend it didn't just wink at you. The second obstacle is your own brain. The moment your eyes close, your mind opens. It replays every near miss, every name you forgot, every meal you shouldn't have eaten. It plays symphonies of guilt, fear, and absurd flashbacks of yesterday's powdered eggs. You remember home, a pillow, a mattress, the luxury of silence, and you remember that none of it exists here. The third obstacle, the snorer. There's one in every unit. He sounds like a tractor stuck in mud, like a pig gargling gravel, like a malfunctioning accordion being strangled by a moose. You want to throw a sock at him, but you only have one left, and it's already serving double duty as a mitten. Eventually exhaustion wins. Your muscles twitch, your eyes flutter, your breathing slows. You sink into the fabric of your sleeping roll, the smell of damp wool and old farts filling your lungs like a lullaby. And just as you begin to drift, boom, shells, not near, but close enough. You flinch, roll over and brace. No alarm, no shouting, just one stray barrage, probably meant for someone else. A reminder that peace is never guaranteed, even in dreams. There was a phrase used by soldiers in the Pacific: sleep when you're dead. It wasn't bravado, it was reality. In the jungle, every rustle might be an ambush. In the desert, every shadow might be a dive bomber. Sleep wasn't rest, it was Russian roulette with a blanket. Many troops developed combat insomnia, a constant state of light dozing and hypervigilance. Others used alcohol, pills, or sheer exhaustion to force themselves unconscious. You count rocks, breathe slowly, and pray your bladder doesn't wake you before dawn. Hours pass. Maybe. You wake up with a start, gasping. Not from a nightmare, but from your own body collapsing under a cramp. Your leg's gone stiff. Your arm is asleep. Your mouth tastes like wool and yesterday's stew. You sit up, stretch, and immediately regret it. Something in your back makes a noise like snapping celery. You open the tent flap as it's still dark, still muddy, still cold. You check your watch. You slept for 48 minutes. Progress. In the corner, a man mutters in his sleep. Something about home, or horses, or please no more beats. You nod in solidarity. Another soldier sits outside, staring at the sky. You join him quietly. No words. Just breathing in the heavy fog and pretending the stars are actually visible. For a moment it's calm. For a moment you forget you're at war. Then someone steps on a rake. You go back to bed. You lie down again, curling around your rifle like it's a space heater. The ground is somehow wetter than before. Your socks are damp. You no longer care. You're not sleeping, you're resting with intent. There's a difference. Tomorrow will bring drills, marching, rations, maybe shelling, maybe not. But tonight, for just a sliver of the night, your eyes stay closed, your thoughts quiet. And for once, your rats stay in their lane. It's not restful, it's not peaceful, but it's sleep. And you'll take what you can get. You wake up sweating. Not from the heat, it's cold, as usual. The sweat is from anxiety. You dreamed of fire. Not the comforting kind that crackles in a hearth and smells faintly of cinnamon. No, this fire roared like a dragon and smelled like burning everything. And then you remember, today's your turn with the flamethrower. Let's get one thing out of the way. Nobody wants to be the flamethrower guy. Nobody dreams of carrying 70 pounds of explosive liquid on their back in a metal tank that screams, "Shoot me first." But here you are, voluntold. Your number came up. And now, strapped to your shoulders is a weapon that's both terrifying and impractically heavy. The M2 flamethrower, a beast of American engineering fueled by gasoline and jellied death. It hisses faintly as you move, a sound you hope doesn't attract bees, or bullets, or bad luck. The instructor walks you through it again. Flip the valve, pull the trigger. Don't aim near friends. Try not to fall over. If you hear a leak, panic responsibly. You nod, even though every part of you is screaming. Because the M2 isn't just a weapon, it's a mobile bomb with a grudge. Flamethrowers were used by multiple nations in World War II, most notoriously in the Pacific Theatre. Their primary function was to clear bunkers, trenches and fortifications where conventional weapons couldn't reach. They were especially effective against pillboxes, fortified machine gun nests often hidden in the jungle or embedded into hillsides. The psychological impact was as powerful as the fire itself. Entire units sometimes surrendered at the sight of one. Other times they opened fire the moment they saw the fuel tank glinting in the sun. That glint, by the way, is now strapped to you. The M2 weighs about 70 pounds loaded. The fuel is usually a mix of gasoline and napalm, a sticky, slow-burning gel that clings to surfaces and screams, unholy agony. The nozzle connects to a pilot light, which ignites the fuel as it sprays. Effective range? About 20 to 40 meters, which means you'll be well within range of enemy rifles by the time it matters. You try not to think about that. You begin your approach with a small squad. Your target is a heavily fortified dugout believed to be housing a machine gun crew. Trees line the path. The ground is soft. Every step feels like dragging a furnace through wet clay. The weight pulls your shoulders back. The nozzle shakes in your grip. Your sweat mixes with the grime already crusted onto your face, and your mouth tastes like aluminum. You reach the staging area. Your sergeant gives a nod. You nod back. You're not brave. You're just here. The attack begins. Cover fire rattles through the trees. Someone tosses a grenade into the brush. Smoke blooms like a foul flower. And then it's your turn. You advance, slowly, deliberately, heart pounding, knees shaking, aiming your metal dragon at the dugout's entrance. You flip the safety, squeeze the trigger. The nozzle spits out a burst of fire that roars like a furnace and paints the bunker in angry orange. The fuel sticks. It crawls. It climbs walls like liquid hate. You hear screams, You look away, you step back as the tank hisses. The pressure release valve keeps it from cooking you alive, but only barely. And that's when the wind shifts. The heat slaps you in the face. Your eyebrows singe. Your heart tries to leap out of your ribcage. You almost drop the nozzle. You don't. You keep moving. The use of flamethrowers was effective but controversial. They were banned for civilian use after the war and rarely discussed in post-war media. Not because they weren't efficient, but because they were inhumanly efficient. The fuel didn't just burn, it suffocated. It consumed oxygen, ignited clothing, and rendered cover useless. Many flamethrower operators had short life expectancies. Enemy forces learned to target them first, knowing that one bullet to the fuel tank could turn a man into a torch. Whether that actually happened often is debated. The tanks were surprisingly resistant to small arms fire, but the fear of it was real. You feel that fear now. The bunker is silent. Smoke curls upward. The air smells like scorched wood, melted leather, and something far worse. You step back, legs jelly-like, and shut off the valve. Your arms ache, your lungs burn, and your stomach twists like it wants out of this war before the rest of you. A medic approaches to check your pulse. You wave him off. You're fine, not emotionally, but fine enough. Later you sit by the edge of camp, helmet off, the empty tank beside you. The crew says you did well. You nod, numb. You think about what you did, what the weapon did. You think about the fire. That night your dreams are bright. Not in the happy way, in the burning building way. You wake up soaked in sweat, half expecting the fuel tank to still be on your back. Your hands still feel warm. Too warm. You try to shake it off. But you know this won't be the last time. Because flamethrowers don't come with instructions for what happens after. Only what happens during. The first thing you hear is someone screaming. Not in the cinematic way. No blood-curdling wail or slow-motion echo. Just sharp, desperate staccato agony. And close. You drop your tin of beans, grab your rifle and run toward the noise. Because out here, medic is less of a job title and more of a group effort. And today, it's your turn to help him. You round the corner of the tent and skid to a stop. A soldier lies crumpled near a supply crate, both hands pressed tightly to his thigh. Blood soaks his pant leg and pools into the dirt, turning it from brown to black. He's shaking, not from cold. It's too warm for that. This is fear. This is blood loss. And beside him is your unit's medic. He's 19, his helmet's dented, his boots don't match, and he's got the eyes of someone who's seen more open wounds than birthday cakes. Combat medics in World War II weren't doctors. They were trained, they were brave, but they were not miracle workers. Most were issued a basic kit: bandages, sulfur powder, morphine syrets, and a Red Cross armband that supposedly made them immune to enemy fire, at least according to the Geneva Convention. In reality, that armband was more of a suggestion than a shield. Many medics were shot anyway, some deliberately. The enemy knew, kill the medic and you kill morale. You drop to your knees and hold the wounded soldier's shoulders as the medic cuts open the trouser leg with a dull pair of trauma shears. The fabric peels back like damp paper, revealing a wound that looks like something took a bite. Shrapnel, probably from an old shell buried just under the dirt, stepped on while setting up the latrine tent. Because of course it was. The medic works fast, gloved hands, focused eyes. He packs the wound with gauze, sprinkles sulfur powder. It clings to the blood like flour on raw meat. Then he reaches into his bag and pulls out a morphine syringe, a preloaded syringe shaped like a toothpaste tube with a built-in needle. He stabs it into the soldier's shoulder. The screaming stops within a minute. The shaking doesn't. Morphine was a standard issue in the World War II medic kit. It was fast, effective, and dangerously addictive. Each syringe contained a single dose, just enough to dull the pain, calm the nerves, and keep the injured still until evacuation. Soldiers were told to pin the used syringe to the victim's collar so no one accidentally dosed them again. Double dosing led to breathing failure. No breathing meant no heartbeat. No heartbeat meant paperwork. Evacuation is next. Except there's no jeep, no ambulance, and no stretcher. The last one was turned into firewood yesterday, so you improvise. 2 coats, 4 hands, and a lot of shouting. You haul the wounded man toward the makeshift aid station at the edge of camp. His eyes are glassy, his breath is short, the morphine is working, so is the blood loss. The station is a tent held up by willpower and optimism. Inside, a young lieutenant with a clipboard and hands that haven't seen soap in days waves you toward a table made from sandbags and scrapwood. They lay him down, they check his vitals, they cut away more fabric and mutter things that don't sound hopeful. The medic wipes his forehead. His hands are still shaking. Medical supplies are always low. The sulfur runs out. The gauze runs out. The clean water becomes murky after one use, and disinfectant is so rare it might as well be magic. Sometimes the only thing between infection and amputation is how well someone boiled the scissors. The aid station smells like sweat, metal, and desperation. One man lies quietly in the corner with a missing foot. Another clutches a Bible with a hand that has only 3 fingers left. They stare at you, not with fear, not even with anger, just a kind of exhausted recognition, like they're welcoming you into the next phase of war, the one with bandages and buzzards. The medic sits down beside you outside the tent, lighting a cigarette with fingers that still smell like iron. He doesn't speak for a while, then finally he says, "Better than yesterday." You raise an eyebrow. "Only one today," he adds. "Yesterday it was 3. You nod. You don't ask how many survived. Field hospitals, when available, were better. Triage systems were used, sorting wounded into categories. Those who would survive without help, those who might survive with help, and those who wouldn't survive even with it. The last category got extra morphine. Sometimes that was the kindest thing anyone could offer. You spend the rest of the afternoon cleaning the tools, tweezers, shears, a scalpel that looks like it's carved more wood than flesh. You soak them in boiled water. You try not to gag. You learn something important about war that day. It's not the guns or the planes or the bombs that define it. It's the bandages, the shaking hands, the part where someone who's never seen a classroom with windows has to decide who gets to keep their leg and who doesn't. That night, you try to sleep, but the smell lingers, blood and sulfur and sweat, the kind of scent that burrows into your nostrils and sets up camp. You dream of screaming, of silence, of the medic's hands trying to hold everything together. When you wake, your tent mate is gone. He got a nail through the foot, infected, evacuated overnight. Lucky, really. You've got a secret. A dark, squishy, pulsing secret. It's inside your boots, and it's getting worse. At first you ignored it, that clammy discomfort, the tender ache in your soles. You blamed the weather, the mud, the fact that your socks haven't been dry since Roosevelt was re-elected. But now your feet feel like overripe fruit about to pop. You pull off your boots and get your first real look, and immediately regret it. The skin is pale, bloated, wrinkled like old wax paper that's been left in a puddle. Your toes are red at the tips, white at the base, and they sting when touched, which is unfortunate because everything touches them. You peel off your socks and watch a layer of skin come with them. You don't scream, you just sigh. Congratulations, you've got trench foot. It's not glamorous. It doesn't come with a medal or a dramatic battlefield scene, but trench foot has taken down more soldiers than a dozen enemy snipers combined. It starts innocently enough. Wet socks, tight boots, poor circulation. But left untreated, the condition escalates from discomfort to blistering tissue death and eventual gangrene. During World War I, it was epidemic. By World War II, you'd think they'd figured it out. And yet, here you are, nursing foot rot in 1944 like it's medieval plague season. You think back to the field manual. It recommended keeping your feet dry. rotating socks, using foot powder. Right. Good one. You own 2 pairs of socks. One is wet, the other is wetter. Your boots, meanwhile, were designed for style, not drainage. They trap moisture like a mason jar full of shame. Trench foot was especially common in the European theatre, where soldiers waded through snow, sleet and mud for weeks on end. In the winter of 1944-45, during the Battle of the Bulge, cold weather injuries skyrocketed. Over 45,000 US soldiers were sidelined with trench foot, frostbite, or both. Some divisions lost more men to damp toes than to German fire. Prevention efforts ramped up too late. Quartermasters began issuing whale oil to rub on feet, a thick, greasy salve designed to repel moisture. It worked, sort of, but it also smelled like death and ruined your socks. You never got any. You're still waiting. You limp to the medic. He takes one look and winces, which is never encouraging. He pokes your foot with a stick. You flinch. Still got feeling, he mutters, which apparently means you're not getting amputated today. Small victories. Treatment is limited. Elevate your feet. Air them out. Wrap them in fresh gauze, if you can find any that isn't already spoken for, and rest. But rest is a myth. You're still expected to march tomorrow, maybe dig a new latrine, possibly get shelled, so you hobble back to your tent like a duck made of regret. You try elevating your feet on your helmet. It rolls. You try drying them by the fire goes out. You consider using someone's shirt as a compress. He threatens violence. Eventually you just lie back and stare at your discoloured toes, counting the number of blisters that look like tiny eyeballs. You name them. Back home people think war is dramatic. Explosions, heroism, sacrifice. They don't picture this. A grown man trying to dry his feet with his breath in the middle of the night while sobbing quietly into a wool sleeve. You attempt to rotate socks. You take the wetter pair and lay them out near the cooking fire. You're not supposed to. Regulations forbid it. But you're also not supposed to have mushrooms growing between your toes. A private walks by and mutters, "Smells like cheese." You don't respond, because it does. In the Pacific, trench foot was joined by its tropical cousin, immersion foot, caused by extended exposure to warm, wet conditions. Same symptoms, different climate. Rotten soles, splitting skin, fungal infections so aggressive they could be used as war crimes. Soldiers were ordered to strip their boots at night and sleep with their feet exposed. This sometimes helped. It also sometimes resulted in rat bites. By morning, your foot is wrapped in a strip of torn undershirt and your mood is somewhere between despair and murder. You march anyway, because there's no alternative. Every step feels like walking on raw hamburger. The blisters squish, the skin peels, the boot rubs your heel like a cheese grater powered by malice. You're handed a shovel and sent to dig. You dig. You don't remember finishing. That night someone offers you a pair of dry socks. Not out of kindness. He lost a bet. You take them with shaking hands and cradle them like a newborn. They're stiff, slightly moldy, smell faintly of tobacco and foot powder. They are perfect. You change socks under the stars, giggling like a lunatic. Someone calls you weird. You don't care, because your feet, for once, are dry. Will it last? Will the infection come back? Almost certainly. But tonight your toes are safe, warm, and relatively fungus-free. And in this war, that's as close to joy as you're going to get. You're starving, not hungry, not peckish. Starving. The kind of starvation that makes you consider chewing on your own bootstrap. The kind that gives canned meat a seductive glow. The kind where even the rats are starting to look like ethical dilemmas. So when the mess tent announces there's hot food, you sprint, or limp, with the unholy determination of a man who's been living off hardtack and powdered regret. You don't ask what it is. You don't care. You grab your dented tin mess tray, step up to the front of the line, and the cook, who looks like he's survived 4 wars and a botulism outbreak, slaps down a wet, greyish-brown pile that smells like burning socks and onions. He calls it stew. You call it a test of faith. Field rations in World War II came in many forms, none of which could be described as gourmet. The standard for US soldiers was the C ration, a collection of canned meals that rotated between uninspiring options like beef and potatoes, meat and beans, or meat unit with vegetable filler, which tasted exactly like it sounds. Sometimes, if your unit was lucky or temporarily blessed by logistics, the cooks whipped up hot chow in massive field kitchens. The goal? Calories. The taste? Optional. That's what you're eating now. The stew sloshes on your tray like lava that's given up. It jiggles, it sweats, it whispers threats. You sit on a damp crate next to a guy spooning his meal like he's afraid it might bite back. Across from you, someone holds up a meat chunk and mutters, "I think this used to be a squirrel." You dig in. The first bite is confusing. It's soft, but also gritty. Salty, but also vaguely sweet. You think there might be potatoes involved, or possibly turnips. There's something green that used to be a vegetable. Maybe spinach. Maybe moss. The meat could be beef, could be pork, could be horse. At this point your body doesn't care. It registers only one thing, calories. You keep eating, and that's your first mistake. Because roughly 10 minutes later, your stomach begins to gurgle in a way that suggests internal rebellion. You feel a shift, not emotional, physical, like your organs are whispering to each other, "Hey, this doesn't feel legal. Should we evacuate?" Absolutely. The cook swore it was fresh, which in army terms means it hasn't been buried under ice for more than a month. But the stew was stored in number 10 cans, massive metal containers that, once opened, must be served quickly or risk turning into botulism cauldrons. Proper refrigeration? A fantasy. And so begins the slow dance of disaster. You make it back to your tent. You lie down, and your stomach starts bubbling like a witch's brew. Your face goes pale, your lips sweat, your hands tremble. You stagger to the latrine, muttering apologies to whatever God controls digestion. The next 45 minutes are a blur. Welcome to wartime food poisoning. It was common, it was miserable, and it was, in some cases, deadly. Improper food storage, poor sanitation, and high turnover in cooking personnel led to frequent outbreaks. The army responded by issuing field food safety manuals, which were mostly ignored because nobody had time to read when the soup was already boiling. In some cases, entire units were sidelined with diarrhea so severe they had to be rotated out of combat. One report from the North African front described a week where over 60% of a platoon was combat ineffective due to gastrointestinal complications. You now understand those statistics on a spiritual level. Eventually the storm passes. You emerge from the latrine like a shell-shocked monk, hollow-eyed, lighter, wiser, possibly haunted. Someone asks if you're okay. You look them in the eye and say, "I saw God." They don't ask a follow-up. For dinner you're offered stew again. You decline. Instead, you eat dry crackers, the kind that come in vacuum-sealed wax paper and taste like compressed chalk. They break your molars. You feel safer already. That night your tent mate snores with the innocence of someone who opted for cold spam instead. You lie awake, one hand on your belly, the other clutching your canteen like a security blanket. You think about all the animals that stew might have been. You think about the rat who didn't show up for dinner, suspicious. You think about food back home, warm bread, roasted chicken, pie, and for a second you tear up. Not from nostalgia, from residual intestinal trauma. The next morning the mess line serves porridge. You ask what's in it. The cook shrugs. You take the crackers again, because some lessons are burned into your soul, and some are burned into your colon. Your feet still aren't talking to you, and after yesterday's stew incident neither is your digestive system. But orders are orders. You're marching today, again, through a patch of countryside that looks peaceful if you squint hard enough to ignore the craters, the smoke, and the faint scent of dynamite. You line up at dawn. The sun hasn't cleared the ridge. The ground is still damp from last night's rain, and the air is thick with the particular silence that always precedes bad ideas. The sergeant points toward the horizon and says something about securing a road junction. Or maybe he just growled in Morse code. You stopped listening after he said 10 clicks. You shoulder your pack, adjust your helmet and start walking. Marching is supposed to be a discipline exercise, a way to move men, supplies and heavy weapons efficiently across difficult terrain. But in war, it's often just advanced suffering, especially when that terrain includes hills, snow, and the constant nagging suspicion that the ground might explode. The path you're following was once a road. Now it's a suggestion. Churned up mud, broken planks, tire ruts filled with oily water, and the occasional boot sticking out like an accusation. Trees line either side. That's good. Until you remember that roads lined with trees were favourite spots for ambushes. You keep walking. Marching distances varied wildly in World War II, but many soldiers routinely covered 15 to 25 miles per day, sometimes in full gear, through terrain better suited for goats and nightmares. In Italy, troops climbed steep, narrow mountain passes under enemy fire. In the Pacific, they hacked their way through jungle undergrowth so thick it swallowed men whole. In Russia, frozen earth tore through boots in days. Today you're trudging through ankle-deep mud that clings like guilt and smells like fermented socks. The pack digs into your shoulders. The straps rub raw patches into your sides. Your rifle feels heavier with every step. Not because it actually is, but because your will to live is slowly leaking out your boots. Someone behind you slips. Someone ahead of you swears. Someone near you passes gas so violently it earns a salute. You press on. After 2 hours, you stop for a break. You sit on a rock that might be a rock, might be a landmine. At this point, you're too tired to care. You pull out a cracker from your ration pack, break it in half, and immediately regret it. Your teeth aren't strong enough for this. You nibble around the edges and sip from your canteen, which is now officially lukewarm beef broth with a hint of canteen metal. Then comes the part you've been dreading. The field ahead, flat, open, no cover, and most importantly, suspiciously untouched. You know what that means. Landmines. Landmines in World War II came in many flavours. Pressure-activated, tripwire-triggered, even disguised as household objects or toys. The Germans deployed them liberally, especially during retreats. Some mines were designed not to kill outright, but to maim, forcing enemy troops to use up resources evacuating the wounded. Clearing them was dangerous, tedious work. Engineers used metal detectors, bayonets, and occasionally very unlucky volunteers. Today there's no time for clearing. You're walking through it. You spread out. Spacing is key. Too close and one mine might take out 5 guys. Too far and you start to look like easy targets. You step carefully, not slowly. That draws fire, but deliberately. Like every toe is being judged by God. Your foot sinks. You freeze. You shift your weight. Nothing explodes. You keep going. Halfway across, a bird flies overhead. Someone ducks. Someone else swears. You realise you're holding your breath. You let it out and suck in the smell of cold, wet fear. You make it across. No casualties. One guy lost a boot in the mud. He leaves it. It's not worth dying for. You regroup in a field surrounded by crumbling stone walls and burnt trees. The sergeant grunts something about making camp. You drop your pack like it personally insulted your ancestors and collapse into the dirt. Your legs are shaking, your socks squish. You peel them off and discover 3 new blisters and a hole forming near your heel. You patch it with duct tape. You'll pay for that tomorrow. You pull out your rations and stare into the abyss of another meal that might turn against you. You eat the crackers again. Across from you, someone claims they saw a sheep earlier. Everyone laughs. Not because it's funny, but because it keeps the fatigue from mutating into despair. You look back at the path you crossed. Flat, empty, quiet. Nothing exploded. You thank no one in particular. That night it rains again. You lie in your sleeping roll, damp and crusted with dirt, listening to the soft patter against the tent flap. And somewhere out there, in the field you march through, a mine waits, patient, silent, for the next set of boots. Your rifle has a name now, not because you're sentimental, because you're desperate. You talk to it. You thank it. You apologize when you drop it in the mud. You cradle it like a nervous parent during a thunderstorm. Because tonight you're not just sleeping with your rifle, you're sleeping because of it. And possibly crying into it. It's the end of another 20-hour day. You've marched through muck, dodged suspicious tree branches, eaten a stew that possibly doubled as glue, and now you're somewhere vaguely safe. Which is to say, only probably being watched. Your unit sets up camp in a shallow depression just off the road. Not ideal, but you've slept in worse places, like that foxhole that doubled as a frog breeding site, or the latrine trench during the time you passed out mid-watch. Compared to that, this is practically 5 stars. You roll out your canvas sleeping mat onto the cold ground. Your boots stay on, always. You tuck your helmet under your head like a pillow made of guilt. Your rifle, which still smells like old bacon and gunpowder, rests in the crook of your arm. It's not comfortable, but you're not after comfort, you're after unconsciousness. Sleeping with a rifle wasn't just routine, it was policy. Soldiers were trained to treat their weapons like limbs, to clean, carry and protect them at all costs. Losing your rifle wasn't just a mistake, it was a crime. The standard issue M1 Garand weighed nearly 10 pounds, semi-automatic, reliable and heavy enough to double as a blunt instrument in close quarters. It was your lifeline, whether you were in combat or curled up in a puddle. You close your eyes and try to relax, but then the sounds start. The guy to your left snores like a broken accordion. The guy to your right talks in his sleep, mostly about stew, rats, and something called the bread incident. A few feet away, someone coughs up what sounds like a lung and then rolls over with a wet squelch. You open one eye and check that your rifle is still there. It is. You exhale. In a perfect world, you drift off now. But this world is shaped like a boot, smells like diesel, and has an entire forest of insects nesting in your underwear. So your brain stays awake. It replays every bad decision you've made this week. Every time you stepped too loud. Every time you forgot to dry your socks. Every time you thought, hey, that stew doesn't smell that bad. You shift. The ground pokes you in 7 different places. You shift again. Something warm and furry scurries away from your leg. You decide to stop moving entirely. The military had guidelines for sleep. Theoretical ones. 8 hours was ideal. 6 was acceptable. 4 was common. 2 was reality. Sleep deprivation was a constant companion on every front. In Europe, soldiers went days without real rest during offensives. In the Pacific, monsoons kept camps soaked and morale soggy. On the Eastern Front, snowdrifts doubled as bunk beds and sometimes as coffins. You once fell asleep standing up. No one noticed. You try counting sheep, but they all step on landmines. You try reciting Morse code in your head. You forget halfway through and start reciting stew ingredients. You try humming. Someone tells you to shut up. You curl tighter around your rifle, burying your nose into the stock like it's lavender-scented memory foam. It smells like rust, oil, and 1,000 hours of unspoken trauma. You feel calm, almost, until someone lets out a sleep fart so violent it startles the tent. You clench your jaw. Eventually the fatigue catches up. Your body stops fidgeting. Your brain stops rehearsing your funeral. Your eyes stay shut. And for a moment, a brief flickering moment, you sleep. Not deeply, not well, but sleep all the same. You dream of pancakes, and then you dream of pancakes being strafed by enemy fire. You roll over, you hug your rifle tighter, you whimper something about no more beats. No one hears you, Or if they do, they're too tired to care. Sometime around 3 a.m, someone wakes you up for guard duty. You rise like a corpse, gripping your rifle like it owes you money. Your back crackles, your knees mutiny, your mouth tastes like metal and shame. You drag yourself outside, eyes crusted shut, breath fogging in the cold air. You whisper to your rifle, "Don't let me fall asleep standing up again." It doesn't respond, but it understands. Because in this war, sleep is a weapon, and your rifle is the only one that hasn't betrayed you yet. It's been 3 days since you heard a familiar accent, which is impressive, considering everyone in your camp technically speaks the same language, English, more or less. But out here, English comes in flavours: Southern drawl, Boston bark, Cockney mutter, Canadian ease, New Zealand grunts, and the occasional Scottish word that might have been a curse or a blessing. You're still not sure, and that's just the Allies. Today, you've been reassigned, again, to a mixed unit logistics outpost somewhere behind the front line. The patch on your arm still says US Army, but everyone around you is wearing something different. British, Canadian, Polish, French, Australian. One guy says he's Norwegian but might actually be Belgian. No one wants to admit they don't know where Luxembourg is. Multinational coordination during World War II was a logistical nightmare disguised as diplomacy. The Allied forces had to merge not just tactics, but personalities, slang, and wildly different standards for food, hygiene, and how loudly one could complain about stew. In places like North Africa and Italy, British and American units shared supply lines, bunkers, and occasional brawls. Commanders tried to enforce cultural understanding. Mostly, they handed out leaflets that said things like, "Be polite to our British cousins, they drive on the left and drink hot tea." You never got that leaflet. You learnt the hard way. You arrive at camp and immediately walk into a toilet line that snakes around a tent, through a trench, and ends in philosophical despair. Apparently the British section just received a shipment of beans and condensed milk. The French contingent ate sardines. The Canadians are drinking powdered cocoa like it's their national duty. And you, tragically, had mystery meat at lunch. Now you all wait. The line is awkward. You stand between a French mechanic humming something suspiciously romantic and a Scottish radio operator muttering insults at a mosquito. The man behind you offers you a cigarette in exchange for soap. You counter with half a cracker. It's accepted. Bartering is the true international language. Eventually the line moves. Slowly. You inch forward while trying to decode what the guy ahead of you just said. You think it was, "I'd kill for some dry socks." It might have been, "I did kill for dry socks." You decide not to follow up. Inside the shared tent, the latrine is a marvel of compromise. 3 pit seats, 1 roll of toilet paper, guarded like national treasure. A half-functioning hand-washing station that dispenses exactly 1 drop of brown water per push. And a sign taped to the wall in 5 different languages that reads, "Please aim." No one does. Hygiene differences are glaring. The Brits wash their hands obsessively, if they can find water. The French carry cologne and insist on standards. The Americans make do with powdered soap and a prayer. The Australians? You're not sure if they bathe at all, but they smell fine. Somehow. One Canadian brushes his teeth with whiskey. He says it works. You don't argue. Later at mess, the cultural exchange continues. You sit at a long table with a Polish corporal spooning grey stew and asking if this is what American food is like. A British cook insists it's better than what he served yesterday. A New Zealander opens a tin labelled meat paste and smiles proudly. You pretend to enjoy your mash something. You can't identify the colour and you don't want to. A German POW passes by, pushing a cart of clean sheets. He nods politely. Everyone goes quiet for a moment, unsure whether to nod back or pretend he's invisible. This is war. Awkwardness is universal. Communication is a dance. Pointing, gesturing, miming, Someone pretends to be a cow to ask if there's milk. Another imitates a mosquito to warn you about the tent infestation. Your vocab now includes 3 different words for bathroom, 2 for explosive diarrhea, and at least 5 for don't eat that. Despite the differences, there's something oddly comforting about the chaos. Everyone is confused, everyone is tired, everyone has trench foot or soon will, and everyone, regardless of accent, hates powdered eggs. You bond over that. Before bed, you share a cigarette with a Welshman who once boxed professionally, and a Canadian who swears he saw a ghost in the latrine. You all laugh, not because it's funny, but because you're alive, together, for now. That night you sleep in a shared tent with 6 men from 5 countries. Someone hums, someone snores, someone dreams in German, which makes everyone nervous. You curl around your rifle and exhale, and it still smells like stew, but it is not the worst Tuesday you've had. It begins with a chicken, as most military disasters do. You're on a recon patrol through a recently evacuated village. Half the buildings are collapsed, the other half are pretending they're not. There's rubble everywhere, some broken furniture, and, unexpectedly, a chicken. A lone, suspiciously confident chicken. It stares at you from atop a pile of bricks like it owns the place. You're hungry, your team is hungry, and someone mutters, "Bet I could catch it." You laugh. Someone pulls out a biscuit. The chicken watches. Then you make the first mistake of the day. You say, "Let's flush it toward the alley." A few seconds later it vanishes behind a low stone wall. And then comes the second mistake of the day. Someone tosses a rock after it. But it's not a rock, it's a grenade. You all dive instinctively. There's a muffled thud followed by a deafening crack that sends feathers, dirt, and what might be parts of a wheelbarrow into the air. When the dust settles, you peek over the edge of your cover and see the smouldering remains of what used to be a chicken coop. And behind it, a hut, or at least what used to be a hut. It's now on fire, and somewhere behind the hut, a barn, which is now very much not a barn anymore. World War II was full of minor incidents like this. Unintended explosions, property damage, miscommunications between troops, and livestock-related sabotage. In every theatre of war, from France to the Philippines, local civilians often return to their homes to find their goats conscripted, their cows reclassified as mobile supply units, and their chickens either eaten or accidentally vaporized. Friendly fire wasn't just between soldiers, it was between you and rural infrastructure. You run toward the source of the blast, boots crunching over scorched hay and a truly heroic number of feathers. The chicken is gone, possibly airborne, possibly divine now. What you find is worse than expected. The explosion triggered a chain reaction that set off an abandoned munitions cache, hidden under the barn, probably by retreating Axis troops. Shells, ammunition belts, something that looks suspiciously like a mortar tube, all of it cooking off in short bursts, popping like a fireworks show for no one. You duck behind a tractor tire and reconsider your life choices. By the time the smoke clears, your squad is covered in soot, half deaf and very, very unpopular with the adjacent command post, which is now crawling with officers demanding reports, apologies, and the whereabouts of the chicken. You don't have any of those. Later you're marched into the local mayor's former house, now converted into an Allied liaison office, for what can only be described as a stern debriefing. A British major raises his eyebrows so high they almost hit his cap brim. "So, let me get this straight," he says. "You flushed a chicken into a munitions depot, and then you blew up half the village bakery." You nod. It sounds worse when he says it like that. You're put on clean-up duty. Your job is now to collect the remains of the coop, the fence, the shed, and the pride of your entire unit. You start with a broom, but quickly move on to a shovel. There are boards embedded in the ground like arrows, charred eggshells, a metal bucket fused to what might have once been a roost, and feathers. So many feathers. It looks like a pillow factory lost a knife fight. The local farmer returns just in time to see you trying to retrieve his burned wheelbarrow from a nearby tree. He doesn't speak English. You don't speak French. But the universal language of disapproval transcends translation. He points at you. He shouts. You nod. You offer him a ration bar. He throws it on the ground. You try to explain accident. He tries to explain something with a lot of finger wagging and you think the word for idiots. You accept this. Civilians were often caught in the crossfire of not just combat, but military stupidity. After the Normandy invasion, Allied units spread rapidly through towns, often requisitioning buildings, vehicles, and yes, livestock, without formal compensation. While some French and Dutch families welcomed the soldiers with wine and flowers, others woke up to find their cows missing and their fences converted into firewood. Military police sometimes mediated disputes, sometimes they didn't. War wasn't orderly. It was mud, confusion, and occasional chicken-based arson. The next day you receive a field memo. Respect local property. Report all explosives. Do not engage poultry without orders. You tape it inside your tent flap. Over the next week the story spreads. It morphs. By the third retelling it wasn't a chicken, it was a goose. By the fourth the barn had become a supply depot, and you're being credited with disrupting an enemy fallback position. By the fifth, someone suggests nominating you for a commendation. You're not proud, but you do not correct them. Later a supply truck pulls up with a crate labelled morale boost. Inside are socks, chocolate bars and, inexplicably, a live chicken. You name it General Cluck. You feed it biscuit crumbs and whisper your sins to it at night. It seems unimpressed. You never forget the lesson though. Every innocent structure might be wired to explode. Every chicken might be hiding next to a mortar round. Every attempt at lunch might end in disciplinary reports. You tell yourself war is chaos, that accidents happen, and that maybe, just maybe, the chicken knew exactly what it was doing. It starts with music. Not from a radio, not from a phonograph, but from a man with a guitar and an unfortunate moustache, standing on the back of a supply truck and strumming the same 3 chords like he's summoning ghosts. Someone behind you whispers, "Oh no, it's a morale event." You consider hiding in a latrine pit, but it's too late. The truck's tailgate folds down, the guitar twangs, and a sergeant yells, "Gather up, boys, we've got entertainment." Morale boosters were the military's way of pretending that sleep-deprived, lice-ridden, stew-sick men might be emotionally soothed by music, magic tricks, and lukewarm cocoa. And while the intention was noble, the execution often landed somewhere between half-hearted school assembly and vaudeville breakdown. You join the crowd reluctantly. Half the unit is here, mud-splattered, bleary-eyed, cradling tin mugs of something labelled tea, but more accurately described as beige liquid. At the front, a makeshift stage built from ammo crates. On it, the guitarist, a man with a harmonica, and a woman in a sequined dress who looks like she accidentally wandered off a cruise ship into a war zone. She waves. A few soldiers cheer, others just blink. Then the show begins. She sings. He strums. The harmonica guy plays something resembling jazz, or possibly an attempt to summon enemy artillery through sound alone. You sip your cocoa and feel your soul retreat into your boots, but you clap anyway. Because morale matters, and because the last time someone didn't clap at a morale event, they were put on latrine-stirring duty for excessive cynicism. Throughout the war, military leaders understood the psychological toll of combat, so they poured resources into special services divisions, which organised live performances, film screenings, travelling stage shows and mail deliveries designed to remind soldiers what they were allegedly fighting for. The US brought in stars like Bob Hope, Marlene Dietrich, and even Mickey Rooney to tour the front lines with USO camp shows, morale-boosting performances that included singing, dancing, comedy, and generous helpings of awkward jokes about rations. You never got Bob Hope. You got Corporal Jenkins and his interpretive tap routine. After the music ends, the MC, a corporal with a clipboard and visible trauma in his eyes, announces, "Next up, bingo." Half the tent groans. The other half shouts bingo just to get it over with. Bingo was weirdly common in WWII encampments. It required no electricity, minimal materials, and gave exhausted soldiers an excuse to yell something that wasn't incoming. Prizes varied wildly. A chocolate bar, a clean pair of socks, a newspaper from 6 weeks ago. One time, a guy won a live chicken, which immediately tried to escape and was later spotted nesting inside the mess tent. You lose bingo after 3 rounds. The winning card belonged to a man who hasn't bathed in a month but somehow has a full deck of cigarettes. He hoards them like treasure. He laughs like a Bond villain. You eat your cocoa-flavoured crackers in silence. Then comes the dancing. Not actual dancing. There's only one woman, and she's wisely chosen to stand behind a sandbag wall with a tambourine. But the band plays, and some soldiers shuffle, a few sway. One tries to waltz with a broom. You lean against a post, sip from your tin mug, and for a brief second forget the smell of the latrines. But not for long. Someone yells, "Who took my socks?" Someone else yells, "Who cares?" And then the generator powering the stage lights sputters and dies. Darkness, silence, a fart. The mood shifts. The moment passes. The show is over. You help fold up chairs made from shipping crates. One of them collapses. The cook sprains an ankle. The guitarist drops his harmonica into the fire. He watches it burn without expression. As you walk back to your tent, you pass the mail table. A letter from home. You read it slowly. It's short. It mentions the garden, the weather. Something about your cousin buying a new hat. It's meaningless. It's everything. You tuck it into your coat, just above your heart. That night you lie in your damp bedroll and think about the woman in sequins, about bingo, about the harmonica that screamed like a dying bird. You almost smile. Morale wasn't about perfection. It was about distraction. From death, from despair, from foot rot. Even a bad song, played badly, was still better than the silence that crept in between the shellings. You turn over in your sleeping roll. You whisper to the chicken nesting under your cot, "You missed a weird one tonight." It clucks softly. You close your eyes. You don't believe it at first. Nobody does. The sergeant reads the orders aloud, loud enough that even the guys cleaning rifles pause mid-swipe. You're going home, not just out of the trench, not just back to real logistics. Home, across the ocean, across the years, back to where people sleep in beds and don't check their boots for rats before putting them on. It doesn't hit you right away. You pack your kit, return your gear. You even find your original boots in a corner still crusted with that one latrine-related incident. You lace them up out of spite. The paperwork takes hours, maybe days. Nobody's sure anymore. The sun rises, sets, and rises again while you wait in lines, sign forms and answer questions like, "Any bullet wounds? Any lice? Any lingering desire to strangle your commanding officer?" You answer yes to one. No one asks which. Soon, you're in a truck heading to a port, then a ship, then across a vast grey ocean that smells like salt and diesel and faded trauma. You stare at the water and wonder what's waiting for you on the other side. For millions of soldiers, coming home after World War II wasn't a celebration. It was a negotiation. Between expectation and reality, between memory and modernity, between who you were before and who you are now. Your first sight of land is hazy. Dock cranes, smokestacks, civilians who don't flinch when the wind shifts. The harbour smells like wet rope and hope. You step onto the dock with a duffel bag, a discharge slip, and a mind that still hears distant shell fire. Your town is smaller than you remember, or maybe you're bigger, swollen with stories no one wants to hear. People smile when they see you. Some hug, some cry. They ask questions. Did you see combat? Did you kill anyone? Was it as bad as they say? You nod. You shake your head. You invent a new language made entirely of shrugs. The first night in a real bed feels fake. You lie still for hours, waiting for something to explode. You kick off the blankets because they're too clean. You miss the smell of mildew and cigarettes and boots left out too long. You try sleeping with your rifle. It's not there. You use a broom handle, but it's not the same, and you wake up in a cold sweat. A dog barked outside. You mistook it for mortar. You dove under your bed, hit your head, and swore so loudly your neighbour called the police. They understand. Sort of. You try to reintegrate. You eat dinner with a fork instead of a can opener. You sit in silence while people complain about grocery prices, weather, television shows. You nod politely. You want to scream. The war doesn't stay behind. It travels, it follows, it waits for you in the quiet. The VA clinic is full. They give you a pamphlet, you use it to swat a fly. You're told to take time to adjust. You're told you're lucky. You're told nothing. You meet others like you, in bars, in parks, at job sites. They nod at you the same way you nod at them. No words, just acknowledgement, recognition, the shared weight of memory. You learn to measure distance in heartbeats, to count steps between lampposts, to avoid alleyways and fireworks and radios that buzz the wrong way. Some days are better. You laugh, you sleep, you walk past a butcher shop and only briefly think about that one stew incident. Other days you sit in a corner for hours watching your shadow breathe. You try work. It's hard to focus when your boss yells and the sound reminds you of incoming shells. You try dating. She asks about your scars. You say you were attacked by a feral chicken. She doesn't laugh. You don't blame her. You write letters to people who didn't come back. You leave them at their old addresses. You don't expect replies. Eventually you find routine. Not normalcy, that's gone, but routine. Coffee, shoes, newspaper. A walk at the same hour each morning. You still check for tripwires just in case. They told you the war would end, and on paper it did. But your boots still echo with the rhythm of marching. Your dreams still smell like smoke and spam. Your back still tightens when someone slams a car door. You carry it. Not as a burden, not as pride, but as proof that you were there, that you made it back, that sometimes surviving means learning how to live after. You're finally home, not just from the war, but from everything it asked of you. The trench foot, the powdered eggs, the stew that betrayed your intestines, the marching, the flamethrowers, the late-night bingo sessions that somehow made you miss artillery. You endured the foxholes, the frozen socks, and the chicken-related explosions. You slept with your rifle, your regrets, and sometimes a louse named Gerald. You laughed when you shouldn't have, and cried when no one saw. And through it all you carried the unspoken burden that so many real soldiers did. The knowledge that war doesn't end just because someone says it does. It lingers in your joints, in your habits, in the spaces between footsteps. But here, in this moment, on this pillow, in this quiet, you can let it all go. Let the sound of marching boots fade into the distance. Let the cold mud wash from your skin. Let your breath slow and your jaw unclench. Because tonight, you're not on duty. You're not on watch. You're not cleaning a rifle, boiling socks, or whispering apologies to a stolen chicken. You're safe. You're still. You're free. So close your eyes, soldier. The war is over, and you made it home.